Lesson 1.2. Round to the nearest 10 or 100. Locate and label 739 on the number line. Round to the nearest 100. So let's circle our important numbers and keywords. So we have 739, and we have to locate and label that on the number line, and we have to round to the nearest 100. So I'm going to underline nearest 100 so we can know exactly what we have to do. So we see 739 is going to be between 700 and 800. So 739 is between 700 and 800. So let's see which one is closer to. Before we can find out which one is closer to, let's find the number that's right in the middle of these two hundreds. So the number that's in the middle of 700 and 800 is 750. Now that we know what's directly in the middle of the 200s, let's locate and label 739. So if this is 750, then 739 would be in front of 750. So it would be right before 750. So 739 would be right about here. So now let's see which 100 is it closer to. We're only looking at the hundreds. So out of 700 and 800, this is the middle number, but we're looking at the hundreds right now, 700 and 800. So 739 is closer to 700 than it is to 800. 739 rounded to the nearest hundred is 700. So now round to the nearest 10 and 100. So for numbers 4 through 9, we're going to round to the nearest 10 and 100. So let's start with 66. We have to round it to the nearest tens and hundreds. So 66, the nearest tens would be 60 and 70. Now let's find the number that's in the middle of 60 and 70. The number that's directly in the middle, we always find a number that's directly in the middle of our tens. So 65 would be directly in the middle of 60 and 70. So now let's see which one is 66 closest to. So let's label and locate 66. So I'm going to use blue. So 66 would be right here. 66 would be right here. So that means 66, since 66 is behind 65, it is closer to 70 than it is to 60. So that means 66 rounds to 70, and we circle our answer. Now that was the nearest tens. We still have to round to the nearest 100 at the bottom line. So 66, let's find the 200s that 66 is in between. So 66 would be between 0 and 100. We found the 200s that 66 is in between. Now let's find the number that's directly in the middle of 0 and 100. The number that's right in the middle of 0 and 100 is 50. Now let's see where we would place our 66. Now, would 66 be between 0 and 50 or 50 through 100? It would be between 50 and 100. So 66 would be right about here. So that means it is closer to 100 than it is to 0. So number 4 would be 100, and I circled it right here. Number 5. We have 829. We have to round it to the nearest 10 and again to the nearest 100. So 829, the nearest tens would be 820 and 830. Now let's find the number that's directly in the middle of 820 and 830. The number that falls in the middle of 820 and 830 is 825. Now, let's see which one does 829 fall closest to. 829 would be right after, right before 830. So 829 would be right here. So that means it is a lot closer to 830 than it is to 820. So 829 rounded to the nearest 10 is 830. Now we have to round 829 to the nearest 100. So the 200 that 829 falls in between would be 800 and 900. So next step, let's see which number is in between, which number is in the middle of 800 and 900. The number that's between 800 and 900 is 850. So now let's locate and label 829. Now would 829 be between 800 and 850, or would it be between 850 and 900? 829 is going to be right here. So 829 would be between 800 and 850, and that means it is closest to 800. So I circled the 800 because 829 is closer to 800 than it is to 900. Number 6, 572. We're going to round 572 to the nearest 10. So we know that 572 rounded to the nearest 10. The two tens that 572 is in between would be 570 and 580. Now let's find a number that's in the middle of 570 and 580. The number that's right in the middle of 570 and 580 is 575. So now let's see which one is 572 closest to. So 572, would 572 be between 570 and 575, or 575 and 580? 572 would be right here. So that means 572 is closer to 570 than it is to 580. So 572 rounds to 570. Now we rounded it to the nearest 10. Let's round 572 to the nearest 100. So the 200s that's 572 falls in between would be 500 and 600. Now let's find which number is in the middle of 500 and 600. The number that's right in the middle of 500 and 600 is 550. Now, let's locate and plot 572. So now would 572 be between 500 and 550? Or would 572 be between 550 and 600? 572 would be right around here. So that means 572 is closest to 600. And we circle our answer. 572 rounds to 600. Now let's look at number 7, 209. Now remember, we're rounding to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100. So let's round to the nearest 10s first. 209, the two tens that 209 is in between would be 200 and 210. Now let's find a number that is right in the middle of 200 and 210. The number that's right in the middle of 200 and 210 is 205. 205. So now let's see, where would we place 209? Would 209 be between 200 and 205 or 205 and 210? 209 would be right before 210. So 209 would be right here. So that means 209 is closest to 210. So 209 rounds to 210. Now let's round 209 to the nearest 100. So 209 would be between 200 and 300. Now we have to find which one is it closer to by finding the number in the middle. The number in the middle of 200 and 300 is 250. Now, would 209 be between 200 and 250 or 250 and 300? 209 would be between 200 and 250. So 209 would be right around here. So that means 209 rounds to 200 when we're rounding to the nearest 100. Now we're on to number 8. We're going to round 663 to the nearest tens, and then we're going to round it to the nearest 100. So 663 would be between 660 and 670. Now, which number is 663 closest to? 663, I'm sorry. Let's find a number that's between 660 and 670. The number that's right in the middle of 660 and 670. The number that's between 660 and 670 is 665. Now, is 663 between 660 and 65? Or is it between 665 and 670? Well, 663 would be between 660 and 670, so it'll be right around here. 663. So that, since it's closer to 663, it's closer to 660. So that means 663 rounds to 660 when we're rounding to the nearest tens. Now we're going to round 663 we're going to round 663 to the nearest hundred. So that would be 600. 663 would be between 600 and 700. Now let's find the number that's in the middle of 600 and 700. The number that's in the middle of 600 and 700 is 650. Now let's locate and label 663 on our number line we create. So 663 would be between 650 and 700. So 663 would be here. So 663 would be closer to 700 than it is to 600. So 663 rounded to the nearest hundred is 700. Now we're on to number 9. We're going to round 949 to the nearest tens. Then we're going to round it to the nearest hundred. So 949, the nearest tens would be 940 and 1,000. I'm sorry. This would be the hundred. So 949 would be between 940 and 950 because we're rounding to nearest tens. 949 would be between 940 and 950. So now let's find what's in the middle of 940 and 950. The number that's in the middle of 940 and 950 is 945. Now let's see which one is 949 between. Is 949 going to be between 940 and 945? Or is 949 going to be between 945 and 950? That's right. It would be right here. So 949 would be right here, right before 950. So that means 949 rounded to the nearest 10 is 950. I circled our answer, 950. So now let's round 949 to the nearest hundred. So 949 is between 900 and 1,000. Now let's find the number that's in the middle of 900 and 1,000. The number that's in the middle of 900 and 1,000 is 950. Now let's see which number, where would we put 949? 949 would be between 900 and 950. So 949 is right before 950. So it would go here. 949 would go here. So 949 is closer to 900 than it is to 1,000. So 949 rounds to 900 when we round to the nearest hundred. Number 10. The baby elephant weighs 435 pounds. What is the weight rounded to the nearest 100 pounds? So let's find important numbers and keywords. So the baby elephant weighs 435 pounds, one important number, and we're going to underline the question because it tells us what to do. What is the weight rounded to the nearest 100 pounds? So 100 pounds. So we're rounded to the nearest 100. And I also circled 100. So 435. So 435 would be between, since we're rounded to the nearest 100, let's find the hundreds that 435 are between. 435, so it would be between 400 and 500. Now, the number that's in the middle would be 450. Now, let's label and locate 435 between those numbers. So now 435, would that be between 400 and 450 or 450 and 500? 435 would be between 400 and 450. So that means 435 is closest to 400 because we're rounding to the nearest 100. So we focus on the 100. So 435 is closer to 400. So 435 rounds to 400 when rounding to the nearest 100. Number 11. Jay sold 218 cups of lemonade at his lemonade stand. What is 218 rounded to the nearest 10? So Jay sold 218 cups of lemonade. So I'm going to circle our important numbers. 218 cups of lemonade. And we're going to underline the question, what is 218 rounded to the nearest 10? So I'm going to circle nearest 10 because that's what we're rounding to. We're rounding to the nearest 10. So 218, since we're rounding to the nearest 10, let's find the two tens that 218 are between. So 218 would be between 210 and 220. Next step, find the number that's in the middle of 210 and 220. The number that's in the middle of 210 and 220 is 215. Now we can locate and label 218 on this number line. So 218 would be after 215. So it would be between 215 and 220. So 218 would be right here. So that means 218 is closest to 220 when we're rounding to the nearest 10. Number 12. Right. Describe how to round 678 to the nearest 100. So the first thing we need to do is find the two hundreds that 678 is between. So 678 is between which two hundreds? 600 and 700. It is closer to 700. So that means 678 rounds to 700. Number one day, 758 people visited the monkey house at the zoo. What is 758 rounded to the nearest hundred? So let's find important numbers and keywords. So 758 people visited the monkey house at the zoo. Now, what is 758 rounded to the nearest hundred? So we know we're going to be rounding, and we're going to round to the nearest hundred. So let's see. 758 is between the two hundreds that 758 is between 700 and 800. The number that's in the middle of 700 and 800, right in the middle, is 750. Now, let's see where we can locate and label 758. So 758 would be between 750 and 800. So 758 would be right around here. 758. Oh, let me change the color. So let's get 758 in red. So 758 would be right here. So that means it is closer to 800 than it is to 700. So 758 rounds to 800. Let's look at number 2. Sammy ordered 132 dresses for her store. What is 132 rounded to the nearest 10? So let's circle the important numbers and keywords. So 132 dresses. The question is, what is 132 rounded to the nearest 10? So I'm going to circle the nearest 10. That's telling us we have to round to the nearest 10. So let's find which two tens are 132. Is 132 in between? 132 is between 130 and 140. Now let's find a number that's right in the middle of 130 and 140. 135 is between 130 and 140. Now, 132, let's locate it and label it on the number line. So 132 would be right around here. So that means 132 is closest to 130. So that means 132 round to the nearest 10. 132 rounded to the nearest 10 is 130. Number 3. What property describes the number sentence? 6 plus 0 equals 6. That is the identity property of addition. So that means 6 plus 0 equals 6. So whenever you add a number to 0, it will always be that number. Number 4, is the sum even or odd? Now we know the sum is the answer to an addition sentence. So let's solve the problem first. 2 plus 6. 2 plus 6 equals 8. Now, 8, we already know if the number ends in 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8, it is an even number. So since the number ends in 8, the sum is even. Number 5. What name best describes this shape? This shape has 1, 2, 3 sides. So it is a triangle. Number 6. What word describes the equal shares of the shape? So let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 equal parts. 4 equal parts are called fourths.